This is Greg Pass with the Americans in Wartime Experience. Today's date is March the 2nd, 2022. And I have the pleasure to be sitting down in a Zoom interview with Mary Zingg. I believe you're in California right now. Is that right?
Mary Saforna.
Yeah, Mary Saforna. You're in Palm Springs, California.
Palm Springs, California.
Outstanding. So can you give us your full name, please, Mary, and where you were born?
Your full
I
name
was
and
born in Calais, Maine, C-A-L-A-I-S. They call it Calais, but it was Calais, Maine in 1923. In a snow.
And your full name?
My mother had to have the horse and carriage go up on the sidewalk so she could get to the hospital.
What's your full name?
My full name is Mary. My middle name is S-Y-P-H-R-O-E-N-A, Saforna. Cookson is my military name, C-O-O-K-S-O-N. And my married name is Z-I-N-G-G.
Outstanding. So, Mary, do you have any other military veterans in your family?
What did you say?
Any other military veterans in the family?
Yeah, sure. My husband was a sergeant major of the HMS-1 helicopter squadron for President Kennedy and Kennedy Johnson. And he was the head of HMX-1, the helicopter squadron in Quantico, Virginia, and also in California.
Very nice. And what year did you enlist in the military?
What year did you enlist in the military?
That's a good one because I was February 1, 1945. I was sworn in Boston, Massachusetts. And that was right in the middle of the Iwo Jima fracas. And so I remember that real well because, see, I was joining the Women Marines and I had a boyfriend then that was down there fighting. He was just a high school friend.
And let's back up a few years. Do you remember where you were when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
What?
Do you remember where you were when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor? Do you remember what you were doing?
Oh,
where you were?
I'm trying to think.
If you can't remember,
Oh, well, yes, I do, because I was in Bangor, Maine, and that's where the war began. And I went to, I was going to commercial college, and I went to the base, Dowfield, Bangor, Maine, just to see if they had a summer job I could take. And so I was being interviewed by this Air Corps officer, and he said, "Can you come to work in the morning?" And I said, "Yes, I sure as hell can." And so that was where I went to school and resigned from school and started working for the Air Corps in 1941 or 2 or something like that, 42, I guess it was, whatever the war, you see. So that's where I worked for 3 years before I ever joined the Woman Marine. And I was not old enough to join the Marines. I had to be 21.
What were you doing with the Air
What'd you say,
Corps?
Greg? What were you doing with the Air Corps?
Well, I called myself Miscellaneous Norma because I could do anything and everything, and they had me wherever they needed me. And I worked in engineering, I worked in the library, I worked for the colonel, and I worked for the adjutant, and I worked everywhere. And if they had somebody they had to have a job done, they would ask me to do it.
Sorry, what'd you say, Greg?
So you worked for the Air Corps as a civilian for about 3 years before enlisting. Is that right?
I worked for the Air Corps 3 years.
Gotcha. So how did
Before you enlisted as a women Marine?
Before I even went to join the the downfield,
Wanna sit back?
I went to postgraduate college course, and I took typing, and that's where I learned how to type. Then I went to a commercial college, and I worked there a year, and then I transferred to a Catholic school, and the sister used to stand over the radiator, and she would all the heat, and when we used to sit there and freeze to death, so we all quit at Christmas time. And that's when I went to Bangor and joined the Mr. Husson's college that he had for graduating people.
You can sit back.
And I stayed there for, I guess, the rest of the year. And that's when the Dowfield put out the post that they wanted people to come to work. And I thought, well, I'm going to school, but I'm going out to see if they have any summer jobs available. Well, then when the guy was so nice and everything, and wanted to know if I could come to work in the morning, I said, I sure as hell can. And so I started work the next morning, and I was working in engineering. And where they put me was to do the tech orders. Now, the tech orders had to be for every single man that was everything from a mechanic to working into the all the other sub places around and so forth. And so anyway, I fit in just fine because I knew that I could do anything. And Mr. Cronin was my boss in engineering, and he had me do that. I was doing engineering stuff, and then he asked me to do the tech orders things because those had to be filed every single day, and also you had to distribute them all over the base so that each section could fill out the orders on the airplanes that they were working on. That was the Bible for the mechanics to work on the airplanes. And you had to have them up to date. There was no fooling around with it or anything. You just go ahead and get it done, and then they would drive me around in the Jeep to the various places that I had to distribute the tech orders for the day. And it was so exciting because they all loved me, and I just had a wonderful time with them.
that work you were doing, that was in Bangor before 1945, is that right?
Yeah, that was in Bangor before.
It's probably 1942 somewhere around.
Gotcha.
Because I joined in 45 and I worked there 3 years, so it
Gotcha.
had to be around 42.
And that was before before you enlisted, before Pearl Harbor?
I was just a regular employee. I never got to do 3 full years. And I quit just before the 3rd year to join the Marine Corps.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit.
Anything like that. I just go ahead to do what I have to do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So why did you want to join the Marine Corps?
What?
Why did you want to join the Marine Corps?
Well, I always liked the Marine Corps. It was just in my craw. And then my cousin joined the Navy, And the friend that he had joined the Marine Corps, and somebody else joined the Air Corps, all like that. So, but I was the one that I really did enjoy the Marine Corps. And I went to the Air Corps to see if I would like to be in there, but I went into the barracks and it stunk so bad that I said, well, I sure as heck don't want to live in a place like this. So what was happening, they had wood floors. And when they washed them, the water sunk down in the crevices of the wood. And then it made it stink. So the barracks really did stink. And I said, that's no place for me. I'm not living here. My mother was an immaculate housekeeper. And we never had bugs and we never had stink like that. And I said, that's not for me. So I'm joining the Marine Corps.
So
They had cement floors.
So how did you go about joining the Marine
Yeah.
Corps? Do you remember?
Okay, what else?
What'd you say, Gary?
What?
How did you go about joining the
my
Marine Corps?
mother, well, I had to go to the recruiting office and they assigned me a date to go to Boston. And my mother and I went on the train to Boston. And that was the day that I was sworn in, February the 2nd, because it was a weekend. And March the 1st was my birthday, would have been the legal date for me to join. And he said, well, we're not open then, so we'll do it on Saturday. And so that's why I joined. That was my date, February 28, 29, somewhere in there. That I joined the Woman Marine in Boston.
So after Boston,
That's
where did
where I
you go
sworn
to
in.
for training?
Huh?
Where did you go to for training?
Oh, we went to I can't think, but not Paris Island, but
What are some training sites? Do you know?
well, it's
Were you in
near-
North Carolina?
It was a big base, not Cherry Point, but all right, it just left me.
No
But
big deal.
yeah,
So
Cherry
what
Point.
what kind of training did you go through?
What'd she say?
What kind of training did you go through?
Oh my Lord! It didn't have anything to do with guns. They had no gun whatsoever for us to even hold on to or try to shoot or do nothing. But they did all of the medical things that we had to learn and all that sort of thing. And then we had to learn how to march, and we had to learn how to we had classes, and they were all different kinds of Marine Corps terminology. And so you just learned everything that they had about the Marine Corps. And so as far as I was concerned, and then at nighttime, we had Sergeant Pruden, and she was our drill instructor. And she had us out in the field at nighttime drilling. And we won the banner platoon for drilling because they had trick drill and all that sort of stuff we had to do. So that was fun because we all got recognized that way. That was our squadron.
And how long was the training?
We all had barracks. Yeah, we lived in the barracks, and there must have been 100 of us all in that one barracks together in the one floor.
And how long did that last? Your training in your barracks?
6 weeks.
6 weeks?
6 weeks.
Yeah. That was 6 weeks training.
Did you go to any advanced training after that?
I was in boot camp when President Roosevelt died. And so I missed going to his funeral, but then in April 10th, when I was discharged there, and I got transferred to Washington, D.C. that's where we stayed as women Marines. We didn't move around the country or anything like that. They didn't have the money to fool around with doing it from one coast to the other and all that sort of stuff.
And what kind of work was it that you were doing in Washington?
Well, I was the muster roll clerk for the company. And that is, you had to keep track of everybody in the company and what they did, whether they were on active duty for the day or sick or transferred or had disciplinary problems or court martials and all that sort of stuff. And you had to write everything down on this 11 by 14 sheet of paper that was double lined. I mean, just real fine line. And it was on second page. And if you had one teeny little bit of an erasure, the sergeant major would just rip it up and you would have to do the whole thing over. So I never had one piece of paper torn up in the 5 years that I was a muster roll clerk. But I was a very good typist. I wasn't fast, but I was excellent. I didn't have to worry where my fingers went. And one time I took the first sergeant payment, went on vacation, and I had to take over her job of doing the paymaster as well as my own muster roll and the first sergeant's job. And then the captain was there with me. Captain, I'll tell you her name next week. It just left me. But anyway, when they came back, they checked the the paymasters to see if there was any errors and all that. And they got all so mad at me. Oh my God, you can't believe it. I mean, they went out of the office stomping because I had not made any errors. And I said, well, you jackass, that's what we're supposed to do, you know? But I just ignored them because they're too damn stupid for anything else, you know?
Sorry, Greg, I should have given you the cussing disclaimer.
You would not believe the things that happen on these interviews.
You know,
That's the team.
It is really.
Mary, Mary, you mentioned
Nobody said thank you.
Mary, you mentioned you had a female
they
first
never
sergeant.
said
Was the entire company
thank
female?
you for a job well done. Of
Can you hear me?
course, they're both dead now, so I don't have to worry. I can say what I want to.
Was the whole company was the whole company that you worked with female? Your whole company?
Oh, yes, it's all female.
What was the
Oh, yes.
what was the
yes.
what company was it? Do you
We
remember?
didn't have any mixed or anything like
That I'll send you. What company did you work for? Do you know the name of the company?
Company E.
Company E?
Yep.
Company
The
E.
company C was the men's company, and they did have a office, but they their officers were on the other side of our room, but we were not associated in any ways with them or anything.
Sorry, I'll get it.
We could turn it off.
Mary, do you remember what battalion it was?
Pardon?
What battalion?
No, I don't.
Don't remember.
Okay. So
No,
what was the mission of the company that you were with?
Huh?
What was the mission of the company that you were with?
So you were the muster clerk.
Well,
and you
we overtook all of the jobs that the men were doing. In other words, that was our job. We had women that even drove those huge, great big trucks. You had to almost have a ladder to get into them. And those girls climbed up in there and they took those things out there like they were everyday driving and so forth. We had electronics, we had engineers, and we had anything and every job that you had in that a man was doing. the women took over without any shame and just zoomed right in and did the job. They were fabulous. I mean, I went to visit some of them, and then my girlfriend that came in when we joined the same day, and we came down from Bangor on the train, and she wound up in Quantico being a photographer. And she's the one that took all my pictures for me, the ones that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was her job as a photographer, see? Well, of course, I didn't have any trade or anything, so I was picked, so forth.
And Mary, where did you live? Were you in barracks or were you staying in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, we lived in Fondest Marine Corps and Henderson Hall for a long time. And then all of a sudden, the men took over the barracks. They really took over everything, and we had to move out. So we had to move out on SQA, subs and quarters, and we got paid for being out in the, well, I had a room with Mrs. Leonard, and she had 2 teenage daughters that were just wonderful girls and everything. And my roommate was Lillian Cross. She lived in Washington State, but she lied on her application, and she really was only 17, but she looked just like Shirley Temple. She was the cutest little girl. She was the sweetest little girl, and she and I were roommates. And so then she got married to this captain that we know, Captain, I know his name too, but that just flew the coop. But anyway, he went over to Japan and he got polio and was discharged. And then it wasn't too long afterwards, he died. And they had 2 children. And so what happened?
Nothing. I'm just straightening your shirt.
Oh, but anyway, she and I were roommates for 3 or 4 years.
I missed
And
it. I'm sorry.
she came to visit me in California when she was going on through. We bought a house, Bob and I, when we were married. And he was overseas, so she came and stayed 2 or 3 weeks with me because of a long trip after he had died. And then she drove up to Washington State, and I haven't seen her since.
What part did you miss, Greg?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. Where was your office at? Where did you work every day? Was that at Henderson Hall or was that in Washington, D.C., in the city itself? Or
Right there at Henderson Hall.
That's where your office was too, and that's where you live?
It was, we were downstairs in one of the buildings right there, and then the captain and all them were upstairs.
gotcha.
Then the post office is right beside us, and I don't know what other officer was on the other end, but there were very few people on that side. And then you see down in the rest of the barracks, you see, was all the other companies. And then they had that whole wing too, see. But we didn't have anything to do with them. I didn't have to fool with them at all. They had their own crew.
So what was your rank when you got out?
Well, I started out very simple. Finally wound up as a staff sergeant. I was up for tech when I got married, but I didn't stay in long enough to let it go through. But anyway, I was discharged as a staff sergeant in the regular Marine Corps. I was staff sergeant in the Women Reserves, you see. And then when they quit the women Marines and started having the regular Marine Corps, we were the 111 people left in separation company. And I worked in separation company all the time that we had separation company as a muster roll clerk and so forth. And so we went ahead and there was 111 in separation company left. And we joined the regular Marine Corps with 111 people and enlisted. And then there was probably 10 or so officers. I don't remember how many. I used to have the muster for a copy of the last muster roll, but the thing deteriorated, so it just fell apart. The paper fell apart.
So, Mary, do you remember where you were when you heard that the war was over?
What'd you say?
Do you remember where you were when you heard that the war was over?
Well, yeah, I do, because I had duty that night. And when we were in boot camp, you see, is when President Roosevelt died. And then the war had broken out, but was ending when I was on duty at Henderson Hall one night, and the kids were downtown celebrating, and I couldn't go because I had the duty. And that famous picture of a girl being kissed by a sailor, well, that was the night that everybody was downtown celebrating. And that was in April, I think, that year.
I don't know if you can see it. I have that picture right behind me on the wall. I don't know if you can see
Yeah,
that.
got that picture up on his wall behind him.
Yeah.
The picture, the infamous picture.
The girl getting kissed by the
Yeah.
sailor.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was the night that I had duty.
So Greg, I don't know if you caught the whole point where she was in the, Women Marine Corps in the beginning, and then the separation company, there was only 111 of them left.
Yeah.
And that 111 women joined the regular Marine Corps. So she was one of the first, 111 in the regular Marine Corps. So
yeah, and they had some others join with us, but I don't know who in the hell they were. Just a bunch of people that had signed up that had been discharged a long time ago. And they wanted to be a regular Marine. So
are there women?
Yeah, women.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, women.
Mar-
And so I don't know how many they added. I think they said that there was an average of 152 or something like that. So these were stragglers from the time they had been discharged and re-enlisted, you see, or whatever. It was, they never told us anything. We were dumb as whatever. Because they did their thing and they were doing everything, and we just went along with the game, and I just did my typing, blah, 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 and so forth. And then we used to go down to the staff club every night and dance. We loved to dance. And so that's where I met my husband, down at the staff club. And he happened to be home from overseas, because he was always gone a year at a time, and then we'd come back, and then you're back a year somewhere else, And so anyway, that was when I met him down there, and we danced like silver dollars. I mean, really, really were very, very, we were excellent dancers.
Mary,
And it
let me
was
ask
a
you,
lot of fun.
Mary, can I ask you a question? You said you were a staff sergeant. Did you keep that rank when you transitioned over to the regular Marine Corps, or did they change your rank?
What did you say?
Did they change your rank when you went to the regular Marine Corps, or did you get to keep your staff sergeant?
No, I was the same thing, but see, I didn't stay in long enough to receive the tech sergeant.
Tech sergeant.
I
was
was
trying to
up for
achieve.
tech, but I didn't stay in long enough for them to go through the process. So, but I didn't really care. I mean, I had gotten married, and I could not have anybody take care of my children because my mother and father lived in Virginia, and they weren't capable of doing that or anything. We were always so damn poor when we were young. We didn't have a toilet. We didn't have nothing. And we didn't have an ice chest. We didn't have a refrigerator. And my father, one time when during the Depression, he said, he grabbed a shovel and went out and started digging in the yard. And he made himself a gorgeous garden. And everybody in town used to come by and look at it because he had it so arranged so beautifully and everything. And he said, "We will never be hungry again." That was his motto. So we didn't have a refrigerator. We didn't have bathroom. We didn't have any money. Anyway, so he went ahead and took a shovel and started digging under the kitchen. And he dug a hole under the kitchen. And then after he got in the hole, he started throwing the dirt back out, and he made himself, the whole thing underneath the kitchen was empty. He made it a regular room. Then he went down and got some lumber, probably borrowed it from somebody, and made himself some bins for his potatoes and all the other vegetables and stuff. Then he made a space for my mother because she was canning all of the vegetables and stuff that he had grown so that we'd have them for winter. And so then after he got all of that done, he said, well, see, that was our refrigerator, you see, because we didn't have any refrigerator. So by being underneath the house like that, it was cold enough that it would keep stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary,
And so anyway, so that's it. And what'd you say? What'd
Mary.
you say?
Hold on a minute.
Mary, so you were in the service for a total of 5 years, is that right?
You were in the service for 5 years?
Yes, I was in from 29 February 45 to 10 April. I think they called it, I was in from 2 April to 10 April. 2 April 45, because that's when the active duty, you had active duty. See, you had part time where you were just in there, or I guess you want to call it. And then when I was discharged, it was April the 10th, 1950.
Gotcha. So what were the highlights of your career in the military? What are the fondest memories you have of your time in the service?
What are your highlights or your fondest memories of being in the Marine Corps?
Oh, Lord. I had so many of them, I wouldn't know how to say it. You know, we had a wonderful group of girls. And I mean, when I was doing my muster roll, I had to do it at nighttime a lot of times. And the girls were down in the slop chute, as I opened the window, I was up over the slop chute. And I would yell down, "I'm not ready to come down yet," you know, and they were all sitting down having a beer. Well, when I went down, I never drank anything more than one beer because I was not a drinker. But when I married my husband, he carried the can around with him everywhere he went. It was really funny. But then they were overseas, and the boys used to give him all the beers that they got free because they were of age, they couldn't drink. And so he had a refrigerator in his tent, and they would bring all this beer up, and then he and all the other sergeant majors and everything else had plenty of beer.
Was there any times that you especially liked or that you remember of being really good times while you were in there?
Oh, heavens, Betsy.
You made some good friends?
Oh, yes. We used to go, there was always 6 of us that used to hang together. And we used to go every weekend. We'd go down to the DC, And we'd always wind up with a bunch of sailors trailing us, tail, you know. But we would never separate. We made a bargain with ourselves, and we would know that nobody leaves the group. So that way we're always safe, you know,
Smart
because we
move.
never wanted pregnant and get kicked out of the Marine Corps.
Let me ask you this, Mary. Here's a question for you.
That was a
What advice would you give to a young man or a young woman who wants to join the military?
What advice would you give to a young man or a young woman that wants to join the military?
Well, I tell you what, if they want to grow up and enjoy themselves, and I mean, you got people, and you have such good camaraderie, and I don't care what outfit you're in, that you can't help but grow up when you get to be in the Corps or the Air Corps or any of that stuff. It's you know, it's you're on your own, but you're still under a certain rule, and you better not break the rule or you get you kick your ass out. That's the way it was. And so people did not try to get kicked out. They were very content with the good times, and we always were doing something very nice with each other and everything, and always dancing or just going on little walking trips. We didn't have cars, you know. We had to take the bus in, and then we would walk all over DC. My God, I tell you, we went out to the cemetery and we'd walk all the way through that, you know, and never think anything of it because we were used to walking.
She said a lot this week when we've talked to people that she grew up in the Marine Corps. You know, that was really where she grew up, and that was what, you know,
that's
taught her life.
Yes, and we had, now June Clausen was the one that used to sit behind me. And she, when we got promoted, she drew a picture of Peg Goins and I receiving our stripes, you know. Well, you know, people like that, you know, and then Evelyn Robinson was a paymaster, and she and I were friends for years. And when I was driving around country, when I was in my 70s and 80s, I was driving from coast to coast all by myself because my husband died in 1975. And Rose was gone and everybody else was gone. So I'd get in the car and I'd stick my finger up and I'd say, well, am I going to go northeast, south, or west, you know? And off we'll go, and I'd travel and I'd stop somewhere. I always stopped around 4 or 5 at night and would get a room, or I had a F-52 truck, and I had a camper on back. I had a Ford. And so consequently, I could stop any place. And lots of times I'd just stop at a McDonald's and then go to the next McDonald's. That was 20 miles, see? And then I'd go to the next one. And that way I always had company, I always had protection and all that sort of stuff. I never camped by myself or anything, unless I was in a motel. But I really did enjoy it. I went to every single state except Montana. And why I missed that huge state, I have no idea. I think it's because we thought it was too wide to go across and everything. So we'd always managed to go around and visit certain cities, you see, and all that sort of stuff. And my husband's parents lived in Madison, Wisconsin. So I would always go across country and I always skip up to Madison to say hello to them. Then I go down through Detroit and all that, so it's down into Maine. So it's really, you know, I really just love driving and everything. Nobody wanted to go with me. I tried to ask people to go, and it didn't cost them anything because I was paying for everything.
Mary,
Huh?
Mary, I got
That
another,
is? Oh, no.
can you hear me?
Go ahead.
I got
Yep.
another question for you. This one's a doozy. So
Uh-oh.
we're gonna send you a copy of this video, and we'll give you instructions on how you can submit it to the Library of Congress for the Veterans History Project. So theoretically, your story will be documented for several hundred years down the road. If one of your relatives, one of your great grandkids, or another relative stumbled upon the video, what would you want them to know about your service to your country?
I can't hear you.
So this video, they're going to archive it, and it's going to go to the Library of Congress.
Oh
And
my.
so it's going to be available for hundreds of years potentially.
Yeah.
So if somebody in our family years and years and years and years down the road, one of your great grandchildren or something like that wants to watch it and say it, what would you tell them, or what would you want them to know about your service?
I tell them that they had no worry about joining the service. People were always wonderful. We had good people that were in charge and everything. Nobody ever was nasty to us or anything. And they really look after you because, see, they have rules where you can't break them. If you want to break them, you get your ass kicked out.
Yep.
And so that was a thing that you didn't want to get happen, to you. And if they want to find out how, if they want to join something, join it and enjoy it, behave yourself, enjoy the rules and regulations, and you won't have any problems. That's a problem when these people try to buck the program. But really, it really was wonderful. We had good instructors and everything. Of course, now when I worked for the Marine Corps, after I came back from working in the for the
At Henderson.
women officer training course and everything, I had to go to work in where they had an office in headquarters Marine Corps, and I was in charge of the mail room. It was like a mail room, and what was I going to tie it to, but I've forgotten. But anyway, we really had, good service and everything. But that was about when I was getting ready to get discharged and so forth. So I didn't worry about it. But we had one little fella, he was shy. And the boss that we had was an asshole. And she used to come in there and just played the hell out of him. And he would turn beet red and pass out on the floor. And I went in one day and chewed her out for her stupidity. And of course, I didn't have to worry, I was getting out anyway. So it didn't matter if she was going to bust me out or not. Didn't matter. But I chewed her a new one. And I was not afraid to chew anybody out. There was a lot of officers where we were in, even when I was a civil service person, we had a lot of officers that were just new people that came in and would throw a piece of paper on your desk and demand that you do it right there and then. And we were all so busy, we didn't know whether they were coming or going. And we'd kick their asses out of the room. And the colonel would come in, he said, I wish you would be nicer to those boys. And we said, you better get your ass back in your chair or you're going to find out what's going to happen to you. And that's how we talked. I had a boss that was so cute, beautiful. She was beautiful, had beautiful skin. She had beautiful hair. And she was a whiz bang at doing her job, see. Well, I tell you what, when those officers came in there and tried to give her a new one, she just laid them out in the lavender. And I used to drop my pencil on the floor so I could laugh because I was laughing so hard. I didn't want anybody to see me laughing. But she was a jewel, I tell you what, she kept that office going. We had so much work, and she had this machine. It was called an MTST or something like that. And she get on that, and it was like a big computer, only it was about 4 feet by 4 feet, And she had all that in there. Well, one day we had a letter going to the general, and it had one little dot on it. And every time we made a copy, it had the dot somewhere else. Well, we couldn't send it because it had that damn dot in there. So we tried and tried and tried. Well, anyway, finally she had to call the man that fixed everything, and he come over and he tried and he tried. He found that there was something like some paper clips or something that had gotten down in the apparatus that made it work, you see. And so when it would go off, it would flip that thingamajig up in the air, and it would go over and it would drop down somewhere else. You see, that's why we couldn't find it. But that fellow that fixed our machine, he finally found out what was wrong and so forth. But we used to laugh over there because
let me see if he's got any other questions for you.
Mary?
Yeah.
Hey, we're gonna have to wrap this up real quick. I wanted to let you know, I cannot thank you enough for spending time with us tonight. And on behalf of the Americans in Wartime Museum, I thank you. And more importantly, I thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, well, that's perfectly all right. I'm surprised that I even had it happen.